We've got some exciting news this week. August 19, 2024 created a Family Unity Parole in Place program, meaning that on that date, August 19, 2024, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services started to accept Form I-131F, F as in Frank. That is a new form that the immigration created for this Family Unity Parole in Place program that President Biden announced earlier in June of this year. The Family Parole in Place program addresses a very serious issue. They announced that this program is designed to help prospectively 500,000 individuals in the United States. And by that, I mean 500,000 spouses and 50,000 stepchildren. What does Parole in Place do? Parole in Place is designed to help a person to receive legal admission into the United States. Many people enter the United States for various reasons. Many people come into the United States without inspection. And when I say without inspection, that means the person has come to the United States, has not had a visa stamp in their passport, or did not present themselves in front of an immigration officer at the airport or at a land border. They came into the United States without passing through that officer, so they were not inspected. The problem with that is then years later on, they may have met the love of their life and they're now married to a U.S. citizen, or that relationship resulted in a stepchild relationship. And so now the normal process where the U.S. citizen could sponsor the foreign national spouse and child gets stopped because that person is not in the United States legally. When someone is not physically admitted to the United States by an officer, they don't receive a necessary document called an I-94. Without that I-94 document, you're not allowed to show to the government that you can apply for adjustment of status here in the United States. So by way of example, an individual who enters the United States legally, for example, a student, and if that person married a U.S. citizen years later, even if they fell out of status, meaning they became illegal in the United States, they would still be able to apply for adjustment of status. Parole in Place was designed for the individual who entered without inspection, who entered without admission. They're not allowed to apply for that adjustment of status in the United States because the immigration system requires them to go back to their home country and apply for an immigrant visa at the embassy. But after having been in the United States illegally for so long, they are then subject to a bar, and that bar has to be waived. And for most people, they would file what's called an extreme hardship waiver for unlawful presence. Parole in Place, if this is granted to the person, would allow that person to now be put into the position of that student, where they were legally admitted into the United States. And now, assuming everything else is okay, and that requires a full screening of information and should be consulted with an immigration attorney, but that person could then now, if Parole in Place is granted, would then allow that person to apply for adjustment of status here in the United States. And as the Federal Register says, it allows them to not be separated from their family for even a short amount of time where they go back to their home country and apply for the visa and successfully re-enter. But it gets rid of the stress of not being uncertain, of being stuck outside of the United States, because there's no way anyone can ever make a 100% guarantee that a person will receive a visa at the U.S. Embassy or consulate where they're applied for. And so this Parole in Place program is fantastic for today's world. It's designed to help a lot of individuals. And again, the Federal Register said 500,000 spouses and 50,000 stepchildren who are here without status, without any way of proceeding for the green card. But they may have an ability to do it, but it's more complex. This is the way the government has come up with a way to say, if you can show us that on balance, it benefits the U.S. to give you Parole in Place, it opens the door for that family to do the process entirely here in the United States without ever having to step outside of the U.S. and suffer that risk and stressors. So the Family Unity Parole in Place program, it's a brand new program. It just started on August 19, 2024. And while it has concepts from other immigration programs, for example, it requires someone to be in the United States for 10 years, from June 2014 to June 2024. It requires the marriage to have existed before June 17, 2024, and that the marriage has to be to a U.S. citizen. The marriage to the U.S. citizen, those are all family immigration concepts. that one can be very straightforward. But the 10 years in the United States, that actually in the Federal Register, they mention that it comes from the cancellation and removal process. That's a term of art that's used in immigration court. So using an immigration attorney who understands those concepts and that history could be and may and should be very useful to anybody preparing an application for parole in place. Because at the end of the day, the government is trying to say we're going to balance the equities. If there's a lot of positive equities on the application, then we're going to approve it. But if they see negative equities, for example, if they saw someone who's been arrested and has a conviction, not for a felony, anybody convicted of a felony is not eligible for parole in place. But if they were convicted for some other crime that wasn't a felony, the government Federal Register says that that person has a presumption that they're not eligible, but can be overcome by a demonstration of showing the positive equities in their application. And again, that goes back to the cancellation and removal cases. Whether or not that 10-year rule comes directly from that rule, I think that's valuable experience that someone can bring forward in an application. And so a attorney who has that experience may be able to maneuver and give you advice because they've seen that happen in other areas of the law. Parole in place program, though, is again brand new. We don't know how they're going to address everything. We expect them to look at it using their expertise. It's a balancing of the equities, and hopefully they're going to continue to look at it with that positive view in mind as they're looking forward to helping people through this program.